Aloha. Today I wanted to do a video in reference to a lot of different things, but before I get into that, I want to first thank the people who responded to the last video and have not only just recently been supporting the channel, but in recent days been supporting this channel. I really do appreciate it. It's all going into the work. Like I said in the last video, I'm going to be doing some animations when I get back, and a lot of the material that I get is going to be, it's going to use some of the expenses, and then also the main part of the expenses going into the quality equipment. So like this audio, I still haven't gotten any of the boom mics yet or anything like that. I've been looking at lavaliers. I'm gonna get some quality lavaliers, lapel mics, so we can get some really good quality interviews. And then for the discussions, I'll eventually get a good solid shotgun mic, and that'll be good for like group interviews. So it's getting pieced together right now. I just have I'm still recording just on the little Zoom that I have, which is okay for these videos while I'm on the road, and I'll just use my other equipment when I'm back. But yeah, this is making some moves, taking some steps. On top of the animation and the interviews, I'm gonna eventually, down the road, it's like the third thing that I really want to get into is start making music. So I got a lot of storylines, and could easily convert a lot of the stuff to lyrics down, and have a little bit of music production background from my brother, who used to make beats and do stuff like that, and can put together some simple music in the future and just layer over some quality lyrics. But that's all down that's all down the line. But it's just some other things that I'm thinking about producing on this channel, and some of the stuff that I want to provide. For the people that were asking about the volume, excuse me, I'm still learning this little Zoom audio thing, and I'm not around my regular equipment, so my apologies if the audio has been low. I turned it up this time on this video so I can see the difference and just kind of like gauge it out and see what happens with all this stuff. So yeah, we're taking it day by day, one thing at a time. So before I get started again, shout out to all the other channels providing like quality content and expanding the storyline of Flat Earth into a more human perspective, and even the people who are just sharing consistent information on Flat Earth, or just basic truth, truth about questioning your reality, free thought as a whole. I really appreciate that. It helps me to know people are out there doing this, and that it's continuing to grow. So shout out to channels like Bro Sanchez, Masterpiece, You've Been Exposed, IPS, and all the other people that are out there who are ODD TV. All the other people, if you haven't checked those channels out yet, they're producing a diverse sort of angle or approach to the flat earth, how I'm seeing it. And yeah, it's nice to know that this information is out there, and people are out there willing to provide these perspectives like this. So for this video, I wanted to expand upon, I really wanted to come from a more human personal perspective in reference to how the flat earth affects the individual and the collective overall. To start off, people have heard the term of serving yourself and service to others. I've used it on this channel a number of times to show the extremes of one or the other getting taken out of hand and not having a balance between both. Because it's not about being one or the other, it's about being balanced within serving yourself and serving others. Because serving yourself is serving others, and serving others is serving yourself. The backwards, upside down alchemy that comes along with serving the self at the expense of others is the system that we are with, the boot that we are under today. From my perspective, the entities or the individuals who have separated themselves from the soul essence, from from the soul essence, and in that soul essence they have to suck the essence off of other people in order for them to maintain some kind of existence. So that happens on the physical level, and it happens on the non-physical level. So you have entities, beings, people who are sucking the soul or sucking the life out of. You can see this just in relationships where one person is taking advantage of another person, to the point of, beating them or hurting them, or not really caring at all about their well-being, which is largely what's happening right now in the haves and the have-nots program. We have a system that is more focused on the monetary gains, which is an illusion that has outranked overall the basic human needs. You have money, a piece of paper that has been instilled with this alchemical importance that outranks the very well-beingness, the livelihood of the people who are living on this plane of existence as a whole. This is how you can have extreme poverty, extreme homelessness, taken even further, the destructive seedless foods, the fluoridated water, the poisonous air, the poisoning of the oceans, the poisoning of the rivers, the water, and taken even further, the psychological poisoning of your reality by telling you that, first of all, you're nothing, you came from nothing, the Big Bang nothing, the illusion of gravity, the relativity theories, the illusion that you came from a dinosaur, that you're basically just a monkey, and all of this just happened out of the blue, and you're just here right now having a accidental experience, and every detail of your soul. First of all, Bill Nye says you don't even have a soul. You're basically just accidental brain tissue that manifested out of star stuff. That's basically what it's telling you. The heliocentric model is based upon the idea of stuff just happening. And when stuff just happens like a chemical reaction, you're basically being told that you're just nothing. You have no meaning, you have no purpose, and if you have no meaning and no purpose, the individuals who have a so-called a prefabricated meaning and a purpose have power over you. So this is NASA. These are the professors in the university system. This is the politicians and every other system of control that's out there to make you feel small, which in contrast makes the haves program feel big. And this goes down even into your Hollywood movies and all that stuff. I was just thinking the other day, like, look at every single movie that's been produced in the last, like, 120 years or however many years since movies have been produced, like, big movies, and even the music industry as a whole. Like, think of it from a human perspective, and not to like trigger like people who are hell-bent on the whole racist program, just to observe this from a perspective. This is, the United States is supposed to be like the most diverse this, the most diverse that, as of now, not even coming from the perspective of the fact that this place is built on the blood and bones of the genocide of the indigenous and the aboriginal peoples, so the black and brown peoples of not only this nation, but the nations of Australia, South America. When you think American, you don't think like dark-skinned, copper-colored American. You think Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, Jennifer Aniston. You think of those Hollywood people when you think Americans. And that's a whole mind control program. And to take it a step even further, these are like, think of movies as like a magic spell. Think of the music industry as like a magic spell. How so-called gangster rap is celebrating the death and destruction of melanated people. And then you have, like in Hollywood, you have your saviors. So the blonde hair, blue eyed Jesus program, you have the saviors of your world. So these are the contrasts that are being projected into your reality to make you think, act, and feel a certain way about certain people. Once again, if you have difficulty with seeing this information or where it comes from, or where I'm coming from with it, in reference specifically to the genetic program, the eugenics program, the genocide, the massacres, like questions of why this stuff exists, one place to start is by looking at Dr. Frances Cress Welsing's information that's available, and then go from there. She provides a lot of solid scientific. She was a doctor. She's passed now, but she was a doctor in psychiatry and psychology at the same time. But I think she was a psychiatrist, but didn't come from the like medicating with actual prescription drugs. She wanted to trace the roots of these storylines and really find out what's going on. So I would suggest checking that information and really see where I'm coming from in this video, to kind of like release all of the emotional attachments to that and just look at it for what it is. Because when you see these number one movies in this music industry and everything it is, from a human perspective, you will realize that the so-called non-melanated, and I don't really like that terminology, but just for example purposes, because it is part of that storyline that I was just explaining with Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. But in reference to the melanated peoples across the world, 9/10 of the planet or the Earth is melanated, and then you have the minority, which is non-melanated, or so-called white, European, Caucasian, whatever terminology you want to use. Yet 9/10 of your Hollywood, your professors, even your teachers in the public education system, your politicians, 9/10 of those systems are filled with non-melanated peoples. That's not a mistake. That's not something that just happens to be. It's something that is very much on purpose and that exists for a reason. And that reason goes into the depths of questioning the reality, into why there's so much poverty in these so-called third world countries. How did these so-called third world countries become third world countries? The colonial program, the eugenics program, all of these generated diseases, the AIDS, the HIV epidemic, the food epidemic with people dying from heart conditions in particular neighborhoods and particular so-called nationalities, and people believing that this is part of their genetics and all this other stuff. That's all a mind control program that we do not allow ourselves to go into realizing, largely because there's still people either defending that this system exists and it's the best thing because of the evolution program, the monkey evolution program. That's one way. And then you have other people who are also defending it by distracting you and saying, oh, well, that's not it. We don't need to be looking at that stuff. We just need to move on and just do all this. See, that's where people get separated from realizing that the human story is very much a part of the flat earth story. And that's where I see the disconnect with a lot of the channels who focus on either one or the other. There's no balance there. And I'm not saying that, to have any kind of expectation on anybody else. It's just to say that these stories, the human story, is not at all separated from the flat earth story. And the quicker we start to share both stories from the perspective of the other story, the easier it will be for people to interpret the information as it exists from a deeper layer, instead of just a linear, oh yeah, well, the earth is flat, so NASA is a liar, and that's it. And then people get hung up in that forever, and then you don't really see like what NASA does, like psychologically, how it affects humanity, how it affects the individual. What system builds up NASA? You have the university system that builds up NASA. And then what builds up the university system? You have the colonial program that builds up the university system, the conquering of lands, the destruction of the indigenous and the aboriginal people. These are these layers that are not being addressed or expanded upon for whatever reason. For how I see it, it's mostly just a timing thing, because right now people are still in the mindset of just, get the information about flat earth and all that stuff will take care of itself. What I'm saying is that it's not going to take care of itself. It will never go away. If you act like the history of this so-called powers that be program will just go away because you look the other way, you are seriously lying to yourself. You're deceiving yourself if you think it's just going to go away. The quicker you start to look at this information and acknowledge this information, the quicker it will be to heal itself. It will come to be to heal itself. That's actually what needs to happen in order for any forward progress to move anywhere. Right now, people are still in the opening up process. So you're basically tearing open these wounds. This is what's happening right now. The wounds of the illusions of like the heliocentric model and so on and so forth have scabbed over. And by talking about NASA, by talking about the university system, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye, evolution, the Big Bang, all these other TV shows and the globe heads, you're basically tearing the scab off of the soul of humanity. And that scab is made out of like fake gold being sold to people as real gold. And what's happening is that people are losing their shit because they don't know, they don't have any more fake gold, which they thought was gold. They don't have that anymore. And that wound has been ripped open and it's now bleeding. And for some people it's healing. For other people it's not, because they don't know what to do now that they've been ripped open. And are now completely vulnerable to the elements of this reality, which is nature and the history that has led up to today. So all of this healing that's from like a human perspective, all of this healing, in order to make in order for that wound to actually heal itself, because like I said, it's just been a scab. We've been living underneath a scab forever. The heliocentric model has been a scab. That wound has never healed. All of these systems that exist out here right now are based upon a program that makes money off of the healing, the band-aids, not true healing, but the band-aids on top of a scab. So once we realize that and start to disassemble that's why it exists and what's going on, then you have, in my opinion, you have a responsibility, whether now or later. And it's not really my opinion. It is a fact that if you don't deal with stuff right now, you will just be passing on that responsibility down to your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren, and so on and so forth. So as much as it's their responsibility to deal with this information, the historical information that exists, that's still today, look at your movies, look at your music industry, look at your professors. You don't see, just from a United States perspective, shrink it down to a California perspective, shrink it down to the police departments. Then you have completely like non-melanated people policing melanated communities. You don't think something is going to happen there? Then you can think of like the KKK's involvement with the police department and how they are in so-called minorities communities. And think about that terminology, minority. How the hell can you be a minority when you're the majority of the people of the planet or the earth? Think about this stuff and how it psychologically affects us, and then say how people say, oh, well, that stuff, we need to just move on. Okay, well, enough with that. Move on somebody else's channel. Do whatever it is you're going to do over there. I'm talking about something that's from my perspective. So anyway, all of this stuff matters. It exists, and it's not going to go away. It is your responsibility because it's your children's responsibility. If you just say it's not your responsibility, then that's just you not taking responsibility. Because right now, everything that our children and our great-grandchildren have to deal with is our responsibility. And the reason why, one of the main reasons why things have gotten so out of hand is because people have continually pushed the responsibility of this information and this healing down to the next generation on purpose. Because when you push the responsibility onto the next generation, that creates the scab. And the scab is not going to heal unless you actually start to medicate that with the natural healing process. And that has not been allowed to be revealed to the depths of what it is. It's not just about the flat versus the globe. It's not just about black versus white. These are just the illusions that get us caught up in the checker game. The chess game is on the soul, the mind, and the body, just as the entrance of what's going on. Each level of the soul, the mind, and the body has also deeper layers of approaches and healing that needs to be made that is not being addressed, is not being approached. So you have the body, the genetics, the genes, and then the psychological perspective of genes. That stuff needs to be healed. You have people thinking, oh, they have a genetic predisposition to heart conditions and all this stuff, and never really looking at the food that you're eating. That's an actual thing that exists today. That's heavily in the melanated community. Oh, you know how we are. We got them bad heart problem genes. All this stuff. Somebody gave you that poison. And that poison is being passed down over generation. It's being amplified right underneath your nose. Literally, you're eating it. It's every day. It's not your genes, it's what you're actually eating. That's just one perspective. Then you go to the psychological food that you're eating. That has the same effect, just like you're told that you have a genetic predisposition to heart conditions and all the diabetes and all this other stuff. You ain't looking at the food. Look at your genetic predispositions to psychological diabetes and psychological heart conditions from all the psychological bullshit that you're eating every day and training your kids to believe in every day. And then go into the soul genetic predispositions of your experience and realize that the same thing is happening on your soul when you have the mainstream religions and all this other stuff and people limiting themselves to one version of reality and just saying, you know, this is it and this is, you're basically dead. You're a zombie. You're stuck, and that's exactly what this system wants people to be in and as. You're either dead because you're ignorant of the information, you have no drive, you have no meaning, you have no purpose. That's the actual baseline of this system, is to be dead. The living, it's not even living dead, it's completely dead because you're not moving at all. You're just barely existing through ignorance. You think you're a monkey, you think you're an accident, you have no meaning and no purpose. That is a dead body. That's a dead psychological body, physical body, and soul body. When you start to become aware of information, but you only fight that information and never expand outside of the level of consciousness that created those illusions, then you become the living dead. That's the zombie. That's becoming a zombie in reality. You are halfway alive. You're alive, but you're still dead because you're not empowering yourself outside of the dead program, the dead system that makes its money off of you fighting the program and not creating a system outside of that program. But just continually, this is what I'm saying, the whole fighting NASA and expecting NASA to provide information for you, and all, they don't give a shit about you. They were never designed. They don't have the power to give you your meaning and your purpose. You're the only person, the only being that can do that. It is your responsibility and for yourself and your children to find your meaning and your purpose. And then it got shit to do with NASA, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, or any other, these other people who are puppets who are put in front of you to make you think and act a certain way. That's the slave program. It's not to say that that stuff doesn't matter in how you make your way through this system. It's that there's another system that most people don't tap into because we're constantly bombarded and consumed by the illusion and don't allow ourselves to go any further than that. We constantly just fight the system. An example of me doing that is when I was in the Occupy protests and just, yelling at the bankers and all that, and I had zero connection with my soul, zero interpretation of how deep this program goes on the soul, mind, and body level. I was just constantly just yelling, trying to so-called fix the system, and then never realizing that this system was never designed and is not designed for the humanity. It's not. It's based upon it's a parasitic program designed to suck the life out of humanity. And the more you sit around and ask a parasite to do something for you, the stronger the parasite will become, because the system will just adjust around the level of consciousness that you have created within the parasitic box to begin with. That's what's going on right now with the zombified program of half life and half dead. So you're not completely ignorant, you're not completely dead, because you're aware of this information that's affecting us, weighing us down on every level, from the blood in your body to your the vibration of your your soul expression in the relationship between the soul and the body, that's all being affected by how you experience your reality in some kind of way, however small. It's effective, and that because that's how this system makes its money. So you have the living dead as the zombies. You have the dead, which is the ignorant program, and then you have or the ignorant mainstream program, and then you have the living, which is actually you finding and walking the path of your meaning and your purpose, and coming into creating a space of life outside of the level of consciousness that makes its money off of death and the destruction of excuse me, the destruction of life itself. So that's where you create your art, you play your music, you think outside of the box, you trace your origins to the depths of the soul, the mind, and the body. You acknowledge the history, you heal these wounds, you see that the wounds need to be healed, you empower yourself to start to think outside of the defense mechanism system, which is this destructive program, and start to realize, like, well, it's only our responsibility to take care of our water, take care of our food, take care of our shelter, take care of our family, and do all of that stuff. If it's our responsibility in the so-called future, it's our responsibility right now. And now that we have this time to realize that exists, then if we don't utilize that time for the best of our abilities, then the so-called powers that be system will utilize that time to expand the storyline of the illusory program around our ignorance of empowering ourselves. Because if you constantly fight a system that shouldn't exist in the first place, then it will only get bigger. This is what the transhumanism program is. This is what the alien agenda program is. This is what the SpaceX and the NASA expansion and the one world government, the new world order, the legal name program, all of this stuff that exists right underneath our noses that we don't question, we don't ask. That's the density of our death. That's the density of our ignorance. And when we don't get out of that density, then we become subjected to it. So this goes into setting the platform up for how individually this affects us in relation to the service to self and service to others. And like I said before, it's not about one or the other, because they both serve everything, and you have to have a balance between all of it. Be founded in a sense of we're beyond this physical reality, and when you're serving others, that's the ultimate serving of the self, especially when a system that makes its money off of not serving others but only serving itself. That's like the peak of the peak of energetic existence, is to do what most people think is impossible. It's like to at least challenge yourself to walk that path. And because there's few people that even allow themselves to do that, but there are people who do that, and those are the people who kind of usher along the actual progress, or at least open the door. People have to crack the door of progress. And not everybody is going to do that. Some people are going to do other stuff. And that's how this system works. It's a part of the system, and not everybody can be cracking the door, because you have to have people that are helping people walk through the door and walk to the door and walk, wherever it is, and heal and do all this other stuff. That's the beauty of the diversity of this experience overall. But if you are aware of the information that helps people crack the door, then in my opinion you have the responsibility of cracking that door open. Because the more people that help crack the door open, the further the door will swing open, and the more people will get through, instead of having to squeeze through the little crack that is only opened by a few people. So anyway, we have it's not only service to self and service to others. It's more intricate than that I have observed. You have to take it more to a personal level. Some of the ways that gets more complex is that you also have people who serve themselves and serve others, but are only anchored in serving themselves and really have no concern, or equal amount of no concern to their so-called concern of others, but they're really only focused on themselves. And you have this with you have the opposite of that too. You have people who only want to serve not others, but one other person. So you can see this in like a abusive relationship, or a imbalanced relationship. And what happens is that you create a tunnel. You create a tunnel of experience, no different than the individual who wants to serve themselves at the expense of others. So like I said, this is just for examples of, there's not only just service to self and service to others. You have people who are playing the role of serving others, but ultimately they only give a shit about themselves. They only care about themselves. There's like this sense of entitlement that exists that says, well, I'm going to do this to make like the baseline of existence, but that's where I stop. There's no balance. I'm just going to let this be, and everybody else has to do all this other stuff, because this is where you have the Queen of England and all that other stuff, this sense of entitlement based upon illusions, based upon people pumping their heads up. Or this is where you have like people on like social media, or more obviously women on social media, who get their heads pumped up by all these thirsty guys who are just hitting the like button over and over again because an Instagram model, shows her ass or shows her breasts in some kind of way, and the artificial ego gets pumped up, and that not only exists in the moment or in like one person's psychology for right now, it exists in the actual persona of people and relationships as a whole, to where people adjust to these relationships. And in that tunnel vision of experience, what happens is that the human story doesn't even matter anymore. Because you have people who are only focusing on themselves. And it's not just themselves, it's like themselves and their family, but the rest of the world really doesn't matter. That's how intricate, that's what I'm saying is the bigger picture of what this have and have nots program is making its money off of, is by, this is where the American dream comes in. It's like, just, become the king and queen of your household. Become the king and queen of your sons and your daughters, and don't worry about the human story, because they don't matter. There's people who are that are going to make it, and then there's people who aren't going to make it, and you just need to worry about yourself. this is what the bigger picture that I'm seeing, that a lot of, even like in the New Age community, on a positive perspective of the New Age community, to step outside of all the nonsense and the manipulative program. They at least have an awareness of the service to self and service to others perspective, but they don't at all go into what I was just explaining right now about the idea of the illusion of service to others, because the New Age program itself is an illusion to service to others, but it's really only existing to serve itself. That's why it can't look at this program. That's why it can't address the poverty of the entire earth plane. That's why it can't address the flat earth. It can't look at any of that other stuff, because it's largely an idea or an illusion of service to others, but it's really just a service to itself. And since people are, within that service, that illusory service to others, within that program, people are on the microcosm serving others. So you're people doing Reiki and doing the crystal work and doing the readings and all this other stuff. So there is a service to others, but in the macrocosm of that world, it doesn't give a shit about people being poor in India and Africa, South America, the genocide of the Tasmanian people, the genocide of the Native Americans, the melanated program, the eugenics program across the earth plane, and doesn't concern itself with that. In fact, it creates this mentality of, that's that program and that's those people, and you can't do anything about it. People are going to walk their path. That's no different than the politicians saying, like, what was his name? Sleepy-eyed dude politician, talking about poverty is in the mind, and our poverty is a state of mind or something like that. That's where that's like where this whole mind control program takes a deeper root, or the hooks get deeper, because it starts to create prescription drugs. Like, that's what that is. That mentality, that statement is a prescription drug. So you don't at all question your reality. You don't go any further into interpreting how far this program goes and how all this stuff is connected, because you're comfortable with that prescription drug of, oh, those are those people, and I'm just gonna take care of myself. So these are the intricacies of not only how the service to self program takes on, or the takes on the illusion of service to others, but how it exists on, like, the New Age program and all these other programs, and even individuals, people who are just full of shit, people who are always just telling you, oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm with you. They don't never they never really do that stuff. There was a word for it. They never pull through. There's a word for it I'm trying to think of, but you know what I'm saying. People are just all mouth talk. They just all talk out of their mouth. Nothing comes from their heart. Nothing comes from their soul. It's just all talk. And ultimately, they're just really serving themselves. And the side effect of that is that you will have people who get in relationships with that, and then they only want to serve. They want to fill the gap. They want to fill the gap for people like that. And then they only want to serve that individual. And then you create relationships where you have people who really don't care about anything else. They look like they care about other people and other things, but they're ultimately, and that's not to take away completely, simply they do certain things. It's not completely like at the expense of everybody else, like the haves and have-nots program as a whole. But this is just intricate systems of how this stuff works together, and then how the consciousness of the individual and the collective actually molds and adjusts itself around these, for lack of a better word, like genetic modifications. This is what's happening. It's like a psychological modification of this experience, to where the same thing happens within like the Stockholm program. You think to yourself, like, how does that individual who has been kidnapped for 18 years like now love this person? Or how does that person who's in like a shitty relationship really love the person who's beating them every day, like giving them black eyes and all kinds of stuff? Men and women, like literally being beaten, physically, psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, every way. This exists in every way. The resilience of the human experience and the malleability, it just adjusts to some of the most extreme nonsense. And that's how I'm seeing what this whole program really makes its money off of, the haves and the have-nots program, by desensitizing you. That's how this program does it. Over time, you're being desensitized to the death and the destruction, the poverty, the sickness and the disease. Over time, we are being desensitized with the movies, with the prescription drugs, with the food, with the water, with the air, with being, the social media promoting all of this nonsense. You're being desensitized to it, and as you're being more and more desensitized over time, you are allowing more and more nonsense to happen, more scabs to never heal and actually get bigger. So this is how this system is actually being pieced together, and how it exists on not only the individual space, but the collective space. It's the as above, so below of the individual and the collective experience. You are in a relationship with yourself. In order to help out with that relationship, we have relationships with other people. Those people you're in a relationship with are also in a relationship with themselves, and also trying to heal themselves and their relationships with, their family members and so on and so forth. These relationships are all complex in their design, and ultimately will not be experienced to the umpteenth degree until we heal ourselves. And that's not being allowed to happen when the system is constantly telling you that you're a mistake, that you're born in sin, that you're just a piece of garbage, mistake, nothingness. You have no soul, no attachment to anything natural. You have no relationship with anything beyond the physical reality. You're just a accidental piece of brain tissue that just happens to exist, and just shut your mouth and go back to work and make humanity great again. That's what's happening right now. It's like, make humanity great again. So that same mentality of make America great again, that's what's happening right now with transhumanism, NASA, SpaceX, the heliocentric model, the university system. That system is make humanity great again. And people know what I'm talking about when I say that, because when you hear that, and you see that hat, and you see that ignorant piece of nonsense say make America great again, and then you have people backing him up. Who backing him up, then it's just nonsense. It's garbage. It has no real intentions on doing anything for other people. It's only for itself. But it tells you it's for the greater good and all this other nonsense. So, yeah, that's basically, I wanted to get into the dreams and the relationship that I had, another correlation between dreams and other stuff, and how that fits into this whole storyline. But I'll save that for another video, because this video's gone on long enough. But that's basically what I wanted to share with this video, is this system is a scab. This program is a scab, and picking at the scab with NASA, you know, exposing NASA, and picking at the scab with even telling people about flat Earth. That helps, because people are realizing that there's a scab. People are realizing that there's a wound. People are acknowledging that something needs to happen. But if you just pick at the scab and you don't do anything about healing that wound and figuring out where that wound came from and how it continues to be expanded upon, then you're not really going to do anything. You're just going to be picking at a scab that will never heal itself. And it goes down to the very relationships that we have with ourselves, our children, our loved ones, our parents, our family, extended family, our friends, our teachers, nature. All of these relationships affect the greater relationship. And that's where I'm coming from with this, the work on this channel. That's where I'm coming from with when I speak about everything that I'm talking about. That's where my intention is, to help people realize that these relationships are being damaged. They have been damaged, and they're being even more damaged when we think we're doing something great, which we are from one perspective. At the same time, if you're only doing one thing and not observing the deeper layers, then you could actually be doing more harm than good. That's from my own experience when I was in the Occupy protests and, you know, yelling at the bankers. And then, you know, that's what this system wants. This system wants you to yell at it, react to it, be distracted by it, because it literally makes it more powerful, because you are not empowering yourself to realize that you don't need this system. In fact, you have the responsibility to figure out the origins of this system and create a better system that is based upon a more natural relationship with each other and the earth plane as a whole. This is why I'm saying, this is why I say the human story is not separate from the flat earth story. Because if you're talking about earth, you're talking about nature. You're talking about humanity and the relationship between humanity and nature and the earth as a whole. It's not just about the illusion of the distraction of NASA and so forth. If you stay there, you're going to be playing and dancing on a scab, talking about, we found the scab. This is the scab. Hooray, we found the scab. Look, I can rip this scab up. Rip. Ah, look at that scab. And it's just going to heal over because you haven't realized that you're the body that scab is sitting upon. And then you have a responsibility to heal the body so the wound will heal underneath that scab and the scab will disappear. The scab is just making money off of the existence of the scab is just making money off of ignorance, zombieism, death, reaction, distraction, and the lack of people empowering themselves. So that's basically it. Thank you for joining me. Once again, shout out to everybody who supports this channel. I left a link to a way you can support this channel in the description below. Shout out to all the channels that are, doing work, regardless of what it is that you're talking about. I respect that people are sharing information that is, for the benefit of, at least one other person. That's where I started with this channel. It's just say, look, I want to provide something just cause. I just want to have it out there just to exist. And if it exists, then that's all it needs to be. And then I'll make some other stuff in the future. But right now, I have a responsibility to do this right now. And everybody's doing that in their own way. So it's a beautiful thing. So thank you. And until next time, from all my relations, Peace, love, and harmony.